the part of us that's looking or relying on inspiration or motivation, we think we have to get into this kind of elevated state in order to make a move. That part can become a trap. I'm always looking for something to put into myself, and then I will be inspired, and then I'll take action.
Yes.
There's a flip side, which is I don't expect to be motivated. I don't expect to be inspired, but I listen and I'm curious. Like, where is my curiosity? Where do I feel like this thing keeps grabbing my attention? I want to learn more about it. And there might be a voice that's like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Go turn that stone over. And what we might find is like, that's where we find our aliveness.
I just thought of a dirty joke.
Okay. So
you were like, there's something that we're drawn to and we're curious about. Like,
stay with me. But I've found that Jesus, come on.
You are listening to the new man beyond the Macho Jerk and the New Age Wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
Do obstacles mean that you're on the wrong path, or are they simply part of the journey? Is the universe conspiring against your dreams, or is it just your own fear holding you back? And what can you do if you're struggling to find motivation or inspiration? Whether you're questioning your career path, second-guessing a major life decision, or simply feeling stuck, you're bound to experience doubt and resistance. In this episode, we discuss finding your calling, facing inner resistance, and the fear that we might be heading in the wrong direction. And we also explore ways to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. What are we talking about today?
are you recording?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Is that all right?
So
We're just diving in.
Well, isn't that what we're here to do? I mean, people are most awake in the first few seconds or minutes of a new thing. So you want to just like waste it with bullshit? Or
okay.
do you want to get after it?
Okay. Sir, yes, sir.
Got to take good care of this thing. This podcast. Got to take care of our people.
I'm just going to open things up here a little bit for you.
Oh, God. Seriously. Let's commit.
Let's commit to
reviewing what you have.
To reviewing what we have.
So we're clear. We're going to save you some grief.
We're going to save some grief. Yes. Thank you.
You just reflecting. It doesn't
work.
work.
I need to play. It's fuck. I need playtime.
Did you just say I need to play Let's Fuck?
No, I said I need to play, and then like as an exclamation, like fuck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want some time to play right now? You're just waiting. You're like, yeah, I see the look in your eyes. You're like, no, I'm going to wait until you say something.
No, we have work to do. Stay on track. Let's stay on task.
Just a little stroke moment. A little slurry. You're good?
We're good.
You sure you don't want to play for another?
Let's keep going.
Okay. All right. So,
I'm taking a break from you.
You're taking a break from me. What does that look like?
Just
in
right
this
now.
moment, what does that look like?
Right here, me sitting right here.
So how does that mean you're going to wall yourself off from me?
It just sounded like a good thing to say.
Taking a break from you. Maybe that's a podcast topic. How do we take a break from one another when you're in a relationship?
I would love to know. If you can write in, let me know how to take a break
from my life,
the dog,
without divorce or upset. Is that it's called checking out, I think.
Okay.
All right. So
let's do it. We still haven't done it. We still haven't done it.
I'm a little bit like, how much detail should I get into here about this person?
This is a person that you work with?
Yeah. Okay. And so they have been they've been ready for a career change. Mm-hmm. And they have been in working with me, they've been in this long process of like who am I really? What do I really want to do in this world? What do I want to give to the world that's mine to give? That's not just, me continuing to kind of contort and orient towards whatever protects me or my wounding, or reactions from my wounding, whatever. So they're kind of on this path of like, what's really mine to do? And
I love that question.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so they found something. They in all transparency, they decided they wanted to become a certified like legal guide for psilocybin. They live in Oregon.
So they want to help people on psilocybin journeys.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're somebody that's very spiritual, and they have a lot of connection to the unseen, and they really were on this path of like, I feel like this is really it. I'm feeling like I just feel really aligned and really lit up here. And then they did their own journey, their own medicine journey. Mm-hmm. And it was what some people would, on the street say it's a bad trip. Now in psychedelic assisted, like psychotherapeutic approaches, they wouldn't, there's no such thing as a bad trip as they say, but I beg to differ. I think there's just straight up really fucking uncomfortable, rough things that can happen. Yeah. So anyway, but the point is that she was really struggling, and it didn't feel, she almost felt betrayed or hurt by the medicine itself. Like that what came through, there was sort of this thing around like, whoa, that doesn't feel good. And then there was a moment in her journey where who was working with her in the unseen said, this is not your medicine.
What do you mean it's not your medicine?
Well,
like this path isn't your medicine?
We don't know, because that was what was said. And so it's open to interpretation.
Or the psilocybin's not your medicine.
The interpretation was that maybe psilocybin isn't her
Or like
medicine.
her grandmother left something on the counter.
Yeah.
This is not your medicine.
Well, here's what's interesting. So she comes to me and I'm like, maybe we examine what is that like, because there's a lot left to infer here. But what's interesting is, so I'm here like, okay, well, let's really lean into that. Listen to yourself. What feels like is yours to do. Let's keep leaning in with like, let's explore. Let's go back in a sober way and like talk to whoever said that, that kind of thing. She goes and sees a colleague of mine.
This has got like gossipy kind of a vibe.
It's a little bit gossipy, but I'm laying the ground for the question.
Go on, girl. Dish.
So she goes and sees a colleague of mine about this, and the colleague tells her that the closer anyone gets to what is like sort of right and true and good for the world, what's in most alignment, that there will be dark and evil forces that will come to try to pull them away and tear them down. And there is kind of a question that there's a theory that resistance is highest when you're closest to your goal or your art. And there was a book. You can tell me who wrote the book, The War of Art.
Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah. It's a fucking great book. So
that's he put that on the cover.
Fucking great book.
It's a fucking great book. Alyson Lanier.
It says New York Times bestseller.
It's a fucking great book.
And then the first quote that you see of the testimonial of the book is fucking great book.
Fucking great. Not even it's a fucking,
nope.
It's just fucking great book.
It in and of itself is a piece of art.
That book
is
review.
A piece of art, I
Love
think.
It. So the closer we get to the thing we're called to do, the more that we're going to expect resistance or darkness. So you're calling it these kind of...
Well, I'm not calling it this.
Okay,
but someone that she spoke with is calling it this.
Yeah.
Which then I got to thinking, I think I know 3 other people. I've known 3 other people in my practice that also think this way. That it's actually kind of, there's sort of this old religious programming around. And I'm going to call it old religious programming. It might just be
What do you mean by
a lot
that?
of people see. Well, they're
like evil and
yes, good and evil. Mm-hmm. Yes, like God and Satan, or good and bad. You know, just that somehow
either this
there's
or
a
that
war of this or that, and that war is constantly happening.
Pressfield was very much of that.
Yeah,
belief, that philosophy.
Yeah, and a lot of people are. That's why I'm bringing it in. Like a lot of people are, and I don't know that it's right or wrong, but there is that right or wrong, good or bad, good and evil kind of.
I have a theory
thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what's your theory?
Well, I want to make sure that did we get what you needed to share to set the context?
Yeah, I think so.
So this idea is that I have a calling. I feel compelled to move towards this calling and honor this calling. It's challenging enough as it is to make a change in my life. But then as I get closer to it, there's also what seems like a deeper or darker force that wants to deny access to that and wants to hold us back. And we could call this evil or dark or those types of things. Is that right?
Yeah, and I just remember I do want to give I want to give a little bit of context that wasn't finished. So the other thing that happened with this person is that a lot of bad shit, quote, bad shit started happening. After this journey, there was she got slammed with lots of what would be negatively influencing experiences, like uncomfortable, negative feeling experiences.
Well, now I'm scared.
Yeah, a lot of people do feel that way.
These dark forces.
Anyway, but what it did was it helped kind of really embed this theory.
Sure.
And I'm not saying the theory. I'm not somebody to say if the theory is correct or not, but it really helped ingrain it. And I have certainly personally been in experiences where the closer I feel like I'm really on path and my hell yes, the more I feel, quote, tested. Like there's just always a test that shows up. And I view it as a test. Like, okay, do you really want this or not? But it can feel like obstacles or resistance or just anything to pull me off track.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do your people, I know that I work with, I have lots of broad range of population of people that I work with, and some of them are very kind of woo woo. What about your clientele?
I would say that there's a kind of a frame here that can be scaled up or down. And so even if it's someone that's just this dynamic with my partner needs to change, or this dynamic with my business associate needs to change, I'm going to speak up and start asking for what I want, or I set a boundary, then I will say, good, you're going to be tested. Let's expect the test, because the test doesn't necessarily mean what you're doing is bad or wrong. And I call it's very eloquent and classy. I say it's the dick thump. It's that you're looking the other way and somebody thumps you right in the dick. You're like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. You're looking for the test. Typically don't see it coming. It's out of left field. And that doesn't mean that what we're doing is necessarily bad or wrong, but if you can kind of look at it as just a test, and if this is a hero's journey of sorts, that we're going to have our trials along the way, and we can feel like we've been betrayed and abandoned, and what the hell, I thought I was called to do this, and why would you do this to me? I mean, this is
a big deal.
These are the big stories in the Bible and the wisdom traditions. It's just how have I been betrayed, by God, right? So I just want to point out the commonalities in that stuff and the universality of a lot of these things, whether it's the really small thing, seemingly small thing of impacting the dynamic of that we have with a person in our life, or changing our paths in order to honor more of what our soul is calling us to do, that we can expect to be tested there. The theory I have is if we come back to this idea of small self and our bigger self, our small self is oriented towards our existence and our survival. It's our parts, it's our protectors, and it can only see itself. It doesn't, the idea of living from more of our big self or our soul or our essence is threatening to the small self. The small self may like to act like it's the big self, and I'll go make money being this amazing person or whatever. I'll get recognition, but actually living from more of our big self is very threatening to the small self because it actually diminishes it. It contains or it deflates the small self, or it deflates the importance of the small self. So I would say that we would expect resistance from the small self, and it would find reasons to be threatened all along the way if we were doing more of what the big self is called to do.
Yeah, and I don't think it's always an internal battle in that way. I think, yes, the small self can feel threatened, but I actually don't think it's always a battle. I have plenty of instances in my own life where my small self is like totally on board with whatever I'm lit up about.
Yeah.
And I think what happens there is suddenly the value, like suddenly the kitty just got real big. Like my skin in the game, like suddenly the value of what I'm after, I've grown real attached to it, or I'm like really invested in a way that it wouldn't feel like I have nothing to lose anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's something there where the small self actually can collude with our essence in ways that are supportive, but then then it's still a small self doing its thing where like suddenly, oh my gosh, I have so much to lose now because now suddenly this matters so much. Holy shit, this is mine to do in the world. And if I don't do this, I've failed my life.
Right. But that's the only part of us that thinks that is the small self. And it's not the big self that's concerned with that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what is it? It's the old Buddhist story of kind of the boat, the vessel that gets us across the river is the small self. It's the ego. And so we take care of it and you honor it, but it's just the device to get us across. And I think, but that the ego wants to think it's the star of the show.
Yeah.
And everything is about it. And I'm raising my hand, like that's the struggle, like that we're all dealing with here. So we would expect that if we were really leaning into what felt more of a calling from a soul level or from our big self, that eventually the small self would start to feel threatened. Like, wait a second, I'm not as important here. I'm maybe starting to fade into the background. This isn't about me so much and how I look, or actually I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. We're putting things at risk here. People are going to think I'm weird, or I'm jeopardizing things that I'm attached to, my self-image. And that's where it's just like, hold on. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for more comfort, for more certainty and safety. I signed up for more acceptance and recognition and validation. And that's where we can expect to start feeling some friction.
So here's the question that I have is that how do we then plug in or weave in the concept of deflection from what is, your goal or your art or what you're here to do? Deflection could be the small self protection, doing its protecting. And
so you mean, what do you mean? Give us an example of deflection.
So let's take a fun one, right? So deflection would be, let's say fun for most. Deflection, a deflection could be like you've got work to do. Maybe you're trying to write a book. Maybe you're trying to make a sculpture. Maybe you're in this internal process where you're coming up with something new for the world or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it would be so easy and so much more fun if you just had sex instead. Or it would be so easy and so fun if you just got you loaded your social schedule in such a way where you were having drinks every couple times a week, and you were building community, and it felt like you're hitting that line of development for yourself, but actually it's pulling you away. Sure. Or you're just loaded down, and what happens for me personally, which is like it's not necessarily fun, but like I get loaded down with all the other sort of domestic to-do list of okay, we need to do this, and 18,000 things that need to happen just to keep the train on track. So, but that all feels like a deflection. And
these are my chores. These are my obligations.
Chores. And I actually kind of I bring in the chores because I think it's relevant to just people that can be like, yeah, that's more me than having sex. Mm-hmm. But I know that sex is like pleasure, things that are pleasurable, sex, drugs, whatever, rock and roll, whatever, those can be deflections. Can they? Do you think they can be deflections?
Well, for me, it's like a minute and a half deflection. So I get back. Yeah, I'm back before the commercial break is over. So it doesn't really impact me.
Nice try. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think it's a deflection?
I think there's some things where if we look at it as, I think this is where management comes in. So if we have a visionary, the part of us that is, kind of, what am I here to do? What am I here?
To be a separate podcast conversation, by the way.
Okay. So what? Yeah. So what am I here to do? What am I called to do? What's called to move through me and as me? Our small self can take that visionary role, and it's that happens early on in our lives. How do I be important? How do I be successful? How do I make sure I'm not a loser? Or like whatever the thing is for us, and that can drive our lives. And as we get older, maybe we start to access more of our big self or an essential self or a soul guide. And that can become more of the visionary, that we're talking about today, right? And this is where I feel called to go. And that's going to challenge all the structures and all the things that we've created in our lives. So there will be things that we have to say no to and we have to say yes to. But I look at it through the lens of like what brings aliveness, what brings creativity, what brings vitality.
But I want to challenge you here because it would be so easy for somebody to be like, yeah, sex brings vitality and creativity. But it's a both and. So have sex and still honor the thing that we're going to do. Like for me, like sex isn't something that has to be taken off the table, but maybe some of the other things you talked about, which is an expectation that I'm going to be able to maintain responsibility for X, Y, and Z. Okay, from a management perspective, if I'm aligning myself with this thing that I say is my calling, there's only 24 hours in the day. There's only 7 days in the week. And a lot of us are like, I'll do that calling as long as it doesn't upset all of these other things. Mm-hmm. And that's where there can be a rub. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's like, yeah, you're moving into another stage of your life. So there's going to be some difficult decisions here. And what clears the road for you? What frees up energy for you? What frees up creativity for you? You might be better served on a big level if you let go of some of these responsibilities. And that's tough because a lot of us are just like, well, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to read productivity books. I think it's important to name, you started this part of the conversation talking about the small self and how the small self is kind of against this shit for one reason or another. Against
the big self. Yeah, absolutely.
This shit. So you're bringing in a manager that's really
the manager needs to serve.
But a manager is from the small self.
But the manager needs to serve the big self. Mm-hmm. I recently had a conversation with a client. He said when we talked about managers, he called them the hall monitor. Like they just took all the freaking fun out of his life. Mm-hmm. And what we've done is we've really started to clarify and galvanize this higher level visionary that he is, and say, okay, now what do we do that serves that? What structures would we put in place? What disciplines, what practices would we put in place that essentially strengthen that and ensure that those things are going to get done? Mm-hmm. And the effect of that was that he felt more free and open instead of at war with himself. Mm-hmm. There were some difficult choices, but it was like, yeah, that doesn't fit for me anymore. And but moving beyond that, the manager, he really felt the manager being in service of himself.
Yeah, it sounds more like a healthy discipline instead of just some wild rodeo, Wild West kind of show internally.
And it's different than like having a drill sergeant inside. You're a piece of shit if you don't do this, and you're terrible if you don't do that. It's different. It's like, wow, I go and have this amazing experience, whether I'm in nature or psychedelics, or I get a glimpse of something and I'm okay, here's my calling. What do I do to honor that? The word is honor. Yeah. What are the actions that I take on a daily basis that honor that? Yeah. And we might find that we are still confronted with things like we're talking about that would be challenging, but I'm less likely to now just kind of step on my own tail and keep myself from going anywhere. Mm-hmm. But with these ideas that I'm going to be able to kind of do it all, kind of live on the same trajectory that I was before without honoring where I'm being called to go.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of a different client right now who that was the conversation that we had about what was going on in her work. This showed up a lot in her work. And she was in that conversation with herself and continued to feel like it was coming from the outside, these obstacles and resistance coming from the outside. And so then it really became about staying really true. It actually helped codify her resilience and persistence to what is hers to do and what does want to move and live through her as her. I think for some people they can tap out. And then for other people, it's actually what helps make meaning of the whole thing on different layers.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be easy. It doesn't have to be hard. Like, we don't have to make it harder than it is. But when you were sharing about this person before, and there was this kind of should I or shouldn't I? I mean, for me, I would want to get to a place where through action, through experimentation, I got to a place where it made sense that this was a yes or a no, or it's time to pivot into this. Because a lot of times we're called to a thing, and once we get there, it's like, oh, we got here to go to the next thing. Mm-hmm. That was never the destination. That was just the next place to go.
Yeah.
And so it
was just the opening.
Yeah, you're just kind of following it along.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are seeking the destination. We want to be done.
Yeah.
We want to go back into sleepwalking and not have to think about it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's really challenging. But yeah, I would want to support her to go see.
Yeah,
like go look and go see what's really there, because I don't know. I mean, a lot of my fears when I've pulled up the rug, they seem really big and bad and terrible and evil and awful, and then there's usually something quite small in there that's really good at making
just to be fair to everyone listening and to name that, like, yes, I encouraged her to go see, and you're saying yes, go see, and that the probably the number one response. At least from the small self is no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
No way.
Well, there it is, right? There's the like, what does the small self want to do? The small self's called to do it. That's a whole different thing, you know. Yeah. But I would encourage her to go see. And to me, it's like walking out onto an icy lake, just one step at a time. You don't run out there, and you just ease on out. Let's take one more step. Let's take one more step. Let's take one more step. And we learn stuff along the way that we can never imagine when we're standing on the bank. And we just get a glimpse of what that reality is like. And I've just found that the more I get into those places, the more that those fears tend to go away. All the scary big stuff.
Initially, I would argue they get louder first. But I think if you stay with
then you confront them and you go through them and like, wow, I was really afraid to... Like, if you really look at the nuts and bolts of what she's trying to do, it's a nuts and bolts process. Mm-hmm. There's an internal process she has to do, but if she were to engage the nuts and bolts process of doing that stuff, she might find her confidence and start to realize, like, on a cellular level, I can do this.
Yeah.
Other people do this. I can do this.
And so there's two things I'm carrying, like, want to respond to what you're saying and then bring in one more final new thing, which is the nuts and bolts is taking action.
Yeah.
So to be real clear, like, it could be a little action, it could be a big action, but just taking that next step. Yeah. And the step is a verb. It's an action.
Yeah, and taking action doesn't mean I'm going to call somebody and talk about it and kind of why I should stay or why I should go. It's like, no, go get into the process.
Make an action that takes you closer to the thing that you think you're
Go do a training or go just find volunteers to do the thing. Like, whatever it is. Go apprentice, like whatever it is, but get into
Go have
that
the conversation.
World.
Go
leave your comfy little place and get into the world somehow.
Yeah. What about what some people call the dopamine brain? You know, we're talking about doing what are you here to do, which is a harder path to walk on a lot of levels. It's not just about growing up and becoming an ally to yourself on big and small levels. It's really deep listening and not just listening and consuming content, but deep internal listening. And then there's, let's say, the dopamine brain that is pretty laden with wanting to eclipse that process. I brought in the whole like, what about when we deflect with something that's so good, like if sex is really good and yummy in our lives and fun and enlivening.
I know it's on your brain this morning. Let me just say that I kind of hear an external versus internal beacon, let's say, and I know people, and I've been this person where the pull to find the next great idea or the next book or the next morsel of inspiration, there's this external thing, and I'm relying on that.
So external validation, essentially.
I don't know. It can be validation, or it could be validation in the sense of like, this is exciting, this is new, this is novel. I love listening to people talk about it.
But regardless, it's external.
Yeah, we could look at it that way. I take in a thing and then I feel excited about it. And a lot of us are the part of us that's looking or relying on inspiration or motivation. We think we have to get into this kind of elevated state in order to make a move. That part can become a trap. I'm always looking for something to put into myself, and then I will be inspired, and then I'll take action.
Yes.
There's a flip side, which is I don't expect to be motivated. I don't expect to be inspired, but I listen and I'm curious. Like, where is my curiosity? Where do I feel like this thing keeps grabbing my attention? I want to learn more about it. And there might be a voice that's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Go turn that stone over. And what we might find is like, that's where we find our aliveness. And you're smiling.
I just thought of a dirty joke.
Okay. So
you were like, there's something that we're drawn to and we're curious about. Like,
stay with me. So, but I've found that Jesus, come on. But what I've found is like when we're trying to get that external thing to be motivated, we find the confidence, we find motivation, and we find the inspiration by doing the thing, by getting into it and getting into the process itself. And keeping that going. So that's a bit different than I'm going to get this thing from the outside. I'll be inspired. Then I'll go and do the thing that I'm resisting to doing. It's like, don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for inspiration. Go do the thing. And then through that process, our state may change, but that's often where we start to find the aliveness. And the process itself is what fuels us, and we continue to explore and discover and learn as we move forward.
Okay, well, you had a really sexy voice today.
I'm glad.
If these interviews are helping you, please leave a positive review on whatever podcast app you use so that others can discover the show more easily.